What? I turned dev mode off, but the FPS counter's still there. I'm so confused. The fuck is happening? Now when I turn it off. What the fuck? You confuse the shit out of me, game. Whatever, looks like we have an FPS counter. It works. To start Twitch music or not, shit eats up like almost 10% CPU just for your music app. Don't get it. Okay, let's see here. Where's SkyPark say we're going? Oh, didn't mean to do that. Clicking on OBS, not on SkyPark. We'll go home, contracts. All right. CYZF, where the hell is that? COVID-19 vaccines. Huh, that's pretty cool. 420 nautical miles. We could do that one, I do believe. We'd probably have to take the 208, but I'd be okay with that. And I mean, yeah, take the Coast Guard one for that. For this mission. Actually, we'll go back to this. Weight and balance. We'll go full fuel. Full cargo. Men's combs. Let's take some men's combs, boys. Now, Flight Sim's been crashing a lot lately. Don't know why, but since the update, I've been getting a lot of crash to desktops. Like a lot. Pretty much every time I play, honestly. Some nights it's good, some nights it's not. Speaking of, I should have checked the server. See what server I'm on. If I remember right, I was server hopping the one night I was playing because we were all doing a bush flight together. And apparently Microsoft has admitted that they've been having issues with the servers. Well, I guess the only way we're gonna find out is to go fly. Alright, let's let it load. We'll do a couple spins, load everything in this cell. So I'm getting 31. Excuse me. Give me one sec here, guys. Let me double check something. Shit. Hold on.
Pause system test. Okay.
My mic's muted again. What's up, Delayed? Sorry, dude, my mic was muted. How's your evening going, buddy? Alright, I think we should be ready here. Oh, no, we're not. I didn't turn fuel on. Now we're ready. Ignition on. Boof. There it is. Ignition off. Starter off. I love how you can actually hear the ignition, the little boof. PC building simulator, that's a good one. I haven't played that. I've never played it, but it looks pretty good. I've watched like Jay's 2 Cents play it and stuff. Fuel boost normal. Everything's heating up. Go on, turn the other display on. Okay, so we're definitely maxing out on memory. Maybe I will back that down. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna back that down to high. I just wanted to see if I could run ultra, but I don't think so. It's quite a bit. Hey man, nothing wrong with getting some knowledge. That's like me too. Like everybody asks me why I play simulator games, like driving games is because I love driving, but any simulator game I'll play just because I like knowing how stuff works. It's alright, we'll bring it up to full. I'm just trying to wait. It's not that cold out. Our temps are actually pretty good here. Ventilate, bleed air on. And I will. Oh, hold on here. Oh, that's a long flight. Should we just go to Fort Nelson? That's not very much money, though. Yeah, alright, let's do it. Taking the vaccines. I haven't loaded any cargo. What's going on here? Oh, I gotta go there to FSJ. Damn it. So yeah, I gotta back out. I'm an idiot. I could just cancel it, but yeah. Kinda wish I could just teleport. Oh, can I really do that? Oh, damn it. Overclocking is just all about taking it super slow. You find the limit to the point where it'll finally lock up, or you see like heat start climbing into dangerous levels and stuff, and then you usually back it down 10% is what I was always taught. That's what I've done with this one on the GPU anyways. Like I've got the GPU in this thing just cranked. Like it's amazing what this GPU will do for being only a GTX 1060. And it's been absolutely cranked for years now. Like, and it just takes it. And when I say cranked, I mean cranked. Like it's what am I running? Right now the I'm into boost clocked at 2075 megahertz on the core clock with 4708 megahertz on the memory, and it holds 68 degrees. And that's while running, like it's rendering the game right now, and it's holding 68 degrees stable at 1043 millivolt. And I'm plus 114 on the core, or on the power limit, plus 212 on the core. This is megahertz, 212 megahertz on the core, and plus 707 megahertz on the RAM. And it eats it. But if I do go any higher than that, I'll start to get artifacting and like it'll start to lock up and chug along. It doesn't like any higher than this. So, but like I said, you up it until you find that point, and then you go, okay, I found the limit, and then back it down 10%, 5%, right? I don't think 22080 Ti is even possible, honestly, because I don't think the 20 series is SLI capable. Or no, is it the 20 series or 30 series? I'm thinking of. I can't remember. One or the other. But yeah, we need to get to. Shit, I thought it was the other way. Damn it. Okay. By all this time, I could have been loaded in. I just didn't want to have to back out to the menu and load back in, because that seems to be when the game crashes. So CYZF. Charlie Yankee Zulu Foxtrot. That's probably the reason why it hates me. Yeah, if I remember right, I can't remember if it was the 20 series or the 30 series though, but I don't think SLI is a thing anymore. Like it's kind of obsolete now. That's like Crossfire and stuff too. I don't think they're really investing into that anymore because they have the technology now to put all that power onto a single card, right? Okay. Why is my plane not um hello? Should we just like be like Wonder Woman and fly an invisible plane? What the hell? How strange is that? Is it like buried under the snow? What's happening here? I'm just gonna give it a minute, see what happens. Oh yeah, no, you have to have thermal paste. A CPU with no thermal paste, it'll cook itself in no time. That's like actually I need to redo mine. I usually try to do mine about every 6 months. Because I game a lot, right? So my CPU is hot all the time. So it's a good practice to change it out every, like, I don't know. Some people say once a year, but because I game so heavy and stream and do it all on one PC, like that thing is just cooking all the time. Because I don't have a very powerful PC, so I'm impressed at what it does for what it is. Okay, like, are you gonna load my plane in or not, game? Do I have to reload again? Don't make me reload again, please. Okay, let's try and restart. Okay, now I have a big block on my plane. The hell do I hear? Oh, it's like, what the fuck is happening? I've seen this bug before, but that is just totally strange. Once again, restart. Did you see the big block on the plane? Like, what the fuck, man? I think it's getting ready to crash. It's kind of acting like it. And I've heard so many different things. I've heard that it's Sim Connect issues. I've heard that it's Microsoft server issues. There we go. The plane has finally loaded. Hopefully. We'll do a couple spins, let everything load in. We will load the plane. Plan our flight. We've got everything in the plane. We're good. I still don't know why the FPS counter is still up even though dev mode is off. But I'll take it.
TOS system test. Okay.
Prop 100, give her a little bit of juice. Throttle 0. Fuel boost on, reset the alt. Starter. Ignition on. There it goes. Ignition off, starter off. Bring up secondary. $11 GB of VRAM and a 57. Well, I mean, if it's that broken, send it to me. I'll take it. Lol. I wish. Could you imagine? Temps are good. Bleed air on. Ventilate. Alright. Okay, maybe I do want a little bit of floodlight. We're good here. What's our closest runway? 10, it looks like. Yeah. Alright, set up GPS. We'll go direct to. Enter. Activate. we'll go Atis, shit, where the hell are we again? CYZF, that's right. Winds 300 at 9 knots, visibility 15 miles. Temperature -23 degrees. Ooh, it's cold up here. Dew point -27. Altimeter 29.37. Light snow. Overcast layer at 3,300 feet. Oh, damn. What were we? 299 or 3? 7. Oops. Well, that's what it says, but that doesn't seem right. Oh yeah, it is, okay. Maybe. Oh yeah. Oh hey, this dude is that a player? That'd be cool if that was a player. Okay. Let's get the vaccines moving.
Yellowknife Airport information India 06000. Wind 270 at 14. Visibility 15. Sky condition. Few clouds at 500 feet. Few clouds at 5,300 feet. Few clouds at 12,400 feet. Temperature -23. Dew point 10. Altimeter 29.37. ILS runway tree 4 in use. Landing and departing runway tree 4. DSR aircraft, say direction of flight. All aircraft read back hold short instructions. Advise controller, on initial contact, you have India.
Yellowknife ground, Gearhead Gaming 421 ready to taxi south departure with India.
Stupid microphone, man. I always forget to unmute it. I am flying into Fort St. John. That's actually where I live. I should actually make it morning so we can actually see, because this will be pretty good scenery from here down. Wait, what? Oh. those are bright. Sorry, buddy, didn't mean to blind you. Good thing you got your sunglasses on. Alright, where the hell are we going here? Is this guy moving? What the hell? No call out, no nothing. Like, I'm so confused right now. Where are we going here? Oh, that's gonna be close. Oh well. Holy, we're down to 20 FPS. Man, I don't know what they did with the update, but that's brutal. Where is... Hold on here. Oh. I wanted the taxi ribbon on, damn it. Oh, hey, look at that. I was actually going the right way. Maybe? Set flaps. Why are you telling me to turn to the right? Now I'm just confused. Well, that's not a runway. That's the end of a
Look at me.
runway.
I have the power!
Don't get it. What's up, Allison? Thanks for the follow. Well, like, where does the taxi really want me to go here? I'm gonna try and go back, see if it'll reroute. Okay, well, they want me to go to runway 34. Let me find it here. Three, four is down there, okay. How are we getting there? Wow. Really? Okay then. Guess I'm on the right track. The taxi ribbon is apparently drunk, so we'll just forget about that. Hey man, Stewie is the best. don't think this is actually a taxiway, but we're turning it into one. Apparently. It says on the map that, yeah, I'm not even going there. We'll just follow it anyways. Unless the dark lines are just actually roads, but I honestly thought it was the taxiway. Are we gonna fit? Oh yeah, lots of room. Alright, let's get back on the runway. Or at least drive alongside it. Seems there's no actual taxiway. Oh, I thought it said that there was a taxiway there, but there wasn't. And it's only runway 3-4 in use, but there's no actual taxiway to get to 3-4, and I just didn't want to taxi down the runway. Like, there's apparently a parking lot over here. We'll go around the back side and come in from the parking lot, I guess. Ooh, can we avoid the lighting? Done. I really wish I could get rid of that frame rate counter, but I don't know why it's stuck up. But it won't go away. Where's the hold short line? Damn it. Don't tell me I passed it. I do not see it in the snow.
Yellowknife Tower Gearhead Gaming 421 ready for south departure at runway 34.
Gearhead Gaming 421 cleared for takeoff. Runway 34 departure to the south approved.
Flick on the old landing lights.
Cleared for takeoff runway 34 Gearhead Gaming 421.
Alright, we got flaps set, yes. Power is good, prop is good. T's and P's are good. We're good. Holy man, they weren't joking about the flaps giving too much lift. This is another bug in the last update. The lift is doubled now in the flaps until the next update, which is ridiculous, I think, but what do you do?
Gearhead dimming 421 continue for south departure. I will contact you next when you leave my airspace.
I meant to make it daytime too.
Yellowknife Tower Gearhead Gaming 421 continue for south departure.
Alright, seems we're cleared for south departure. What are we going to here? Seems it's a long flight.
Gearhead dimming 421, you are leaving my airspace. Frequency change approved.
Yellowknife Tower Gearhead Gaming 421 frequency change.
Alright. I really wish I could get rid of this frame counter. Like, I don't know why it's stuck on. It just won't go away. Dev mode's not turned on. And if I go into dev mode and turn the frame counter off in dev mode, and then turn dev mode off, the frame counter comes back. It's like, that's a Microsoft only bug right there. Lol. Alright. It's gonna be a long flight. Did I turn all my icing on? I hope so. No, I did not. That's why nothing was working. Well,
Edmonton Center Gearhead Gaming 421 is type Cessna Caravan 8 miles southwest of Yellowknife. Request flight following.
Gearhead coming, 421 Edmonton Center. Squawk 6643.
Squawk 6643 Gearhead Gaming 421.
I gotta remember. Oh, it changed it automatically. Okay.
Radar contact 9 miles southwest of Yellowknife, 6,900 feet. Altimeter 29.37.
Copy Gearhead Gaming 421.
Man, this thing climbs like a tank. See, I wish I could get it to run like this in heavy areas, like heavy cities and stuff.
Edmonton Center Gearhead Gaming 4211 3 miles southwest of Yellowknife. Request IFR to Charlie Yankee X-Ray Juliet. Ready to copy.
Gearhead coming, 421 is cleared to Charlie Yankee X-Ray Juliet Airport as filed. Squawk 6643.
Gearhead Gaming 421 cleared to Charlie Yankee X-Ray Juliet Airport as
All right, we're now cleared
Squawk
above
6,
10.
643.
Gearhead coming, 421 read back correct. Radar contact 9,800 feet. Altimeter to 9.37, turn left, heading 185, proceed on course climb, and maintain 10,000 feet. Gearhead coming, 421, did you copy?
Turn left heading 185, proceed on course descend and maintain 10,000 feet. Gearhead Gaming 421.
All right, we are moving. That's cool looking. And are we gonna have to keep climbing? This looks like it might get a little hairy.
Edmonton Center, Gearhead Gaming 421. Request 15,000 feet.
Gearhead coming. 421 climb and maintain 15,000 feet.
Climb and maintain 15,000 feet. Gearhead Gaming 421.
Well then. That is so cool looking. Alright. Hopefully we don't ice up too bad or anything. Alright, well, not exactly what I had in mind. Lol. Well, I thought at 15 we'd be out of this, but apparently not. Oh.
Edmonton Center, Gearhead Gaming 421. Request 10,000 feet.
Gearhead coming. 421 descend and maintain 10,000 feet.
Descend and maintain 10,000 feet. Gearhead Gaming 421.
Oh no, never mind.
Edmonton Center, Gearhead Gaming 421. Request 15,000 feet.
Gearhead coming. 421 climb and maintain 15,000 feet.
Climb and maintain 15,000 feet. Gearhead Gaming 421.
Gearhead coming. 421 contact Edmonton Center on 124.2.
124.2 Gearhead Gaming 421. Edmonton Center, Gearhead Gaming 421, 15,000 feet.
Gearhead Gaming 421 Edmonton Center, continue as planned. Altimeter 29.37.
Well, apparently it's just gonna be nothing but clouds. At least we're getting out of that. That was ugly. Alright, 155 is about all we can get out of this thing before the alarm starts going crazy. Let's go for runway 3. When we get there. Well, apparently it's going to be a pretty chill flight. I almost kind of want to throw on a documentary or something. What's our ETE here? 116 minutes. Oh. Yeah,
Pilots always
watch some
report
Kelsey.
UFOs? I'll explain it all. Coming up.
Let's see.
Hey 7-4 crew, welcome back. If you don't know me, my name's Kelsey. I'm a 747 pilot. My channel 7-4 here is all about aviation. Today I'm here in Baltimore, Maryland, and this is the view from my room. Something that I'm often asked about in the comment sections here on YouTube or in Instagram is how often I see UFOs. And I guess it's a fair question considering my office is up in the sky, and if you work in a normal office, you're probably not too likely to run into the break room and see aliens. And with all the talk in the press about raiding Area 51, don't do that, I figured it was a good time to talk about UFOs. In this video, I'm covering several pilot encounters with UFOs. Let's get into it. In November of 1986, JAL Flight 1628 was coming into Alaska. This was a 747 freighter similar to the one that I fly, but a little bit smaller. The pilots made a radio call to air traffic control to advise them that they saw another aircraft, and they were asking if they were seeing anything else on the radar. Now, since this was 1986, there's a mix of different reports, but basically what I can guess is that they were reporting a very large aircraft in the sky that was right in front of them. Air traffic control asked a United flight that was nearby to head in that direction to see if they could concur what the pilots from the JL flight were seeing. By the time that the United pilots made it there, though, there was nothing to be seen. The thing that's very interesting is these pilots that were flying a 747 were talking about how large this aircraft was. And as you know, a 747 is one of the largest aircraft in the sky, so if they're saying it's significantly larger than them, there is nothing really that we have currently that we're flying that is significantly larger than a 747. However, as a result of the JAL captain actually speaking to the media about the incident, he ended up getting put onto a desk job and then retiring. And it's situations like that that have led pilots to be more hesitant about what we actually report while we're flying and what we actually see. The next incident that I have is from 2015. It's being reported by U.S. military fighter jets.
Girl, going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west. I won't take that. Oh my gosh, dude.
You can hear just how impressed these pilots are with the maneuverability of these aircraft that they're watching. And these aren't airline pilots that don't have very maneuverable aircraft. One of these reports came from an F-18 fighter pilot. If you're wondering what an F-18 is, it's the same aircraft that the Blue Angels use in their air show. And while I don't personally know how maneuverable they are, I'm still hoping that one day I'll get a ride.
You're so thirsty right now.
The most recent UFO report that I remember came last year in 2018. It was first reported by a Learjet and then confirmed by an American airline pilot. Here's the audio clip with air traffic control.
Number 71 Papa Golf, go ahead please.
And there was anybody above us that passed us like 30 seconds ago.
Number 71 Papa Golf, negative.
Okay. Something. It's a UFO. Yeah. It's American 1095. Yeah, something just passed over us. Like a, don't know what it was, but it's at least 3,000 feet above us. Yeah, it passed right over the top of us.
So you have foreign pilots, U.S. airline pilots, corporate pilots, and U.S. military fighter pilots that are all seeing aircraft that they don't know what they're seeing. Does that mean they're alien spaceship? No. They could be military, they could be foreign, or other aircraft that we don't know about. It just means we don't know what they are. And we are yet to have someone show
You
up
guys
and say...
have never watched Kelsey over 7-4 years.
Now, I
It's
don't think
pretty
we can
funny.
talk about UFO reports without
an actual
mentioning the
747
1947
pilot.
Roswell incident. Now, I don't know what it was. I obviously was not there. Some say it was a balloon. Some say it was a UFO. I don't really know. And I think every pilot at some point in their career has had a really hard landing. So I can't be critical if it was an alien spaceship. But if you want to know why the pilots on the aircraft that you're flying on have a really hard landing, I explain it all right here. I look forward to hearing from you. Until then, keep the blue side up. Argo, Hollywood versus reality.
This should be good.
Coming up. Hey 7-4 crew, welcome back. If you don't know me, my name's Kelsey. I'm a 747 pilot. My channel 7-4 Gear is all about aviation. Argo's a movie I really enjoyed watching. Actually, when it first came out, I like watching those historical movies that you know are based on reality. And I actually watched it well before I ever started YouTube. So I really liked this movie, and I thought it made sense to do it. If you haven't seen the movie, since it's based on a true story, I don't really want to ruin the movie for you, but I guess this is kind of a spoiler alert. These guys are running away from the government police that are chasing them, and I'm not going to tell you everything that's going on, but they've gotten onto a plane, which is a 747, and we're about to break down the scenes from that movie in this Hollywood versus reality. Let's get into it.
Swiss Air 363, clearance for taxi.
Swiss Air 363, you are number 2 for departure. Swiss Air 363, you are cleared for takeoff.
Swiss Air 363, cleared for takeoff.
Sweet, things hold great in the environment. Like I've got it. And it goes really nice.
Alright, this is kind of nitpicking, but there's a
But
few
we're at
minor things here I think that are
50,000,
worth
so we killed
mentioning.
landing
This
legs.
wave off that they do here, that's a real thing. That happens in real life. Sometimes it's on the captain's side, sometimes on the first officer's side. But usually what they're doing is they're showing you that they have all the equipment that they use to push us back. They're showing you that they have everything and that you're clear to taxi away. So that is true. However, after they do that, they usually don't run away. I've never seen them run, even when the weather's terrible. I would be running, but I've never seen them run. 2, our radios are not walkie-talkie radios, so they don't make this noise before every time we make a transmission. So those are just 2 things that caught my attention. They're kind of nitpicky, but I thought I would mention them. The next thing here is something that they're doing, which is poor radio phraseology now. It may have been something that was going on during this time, but you wouldn't do what they're showing now, which is clearing them for takeoff and not saying specifically what runway they're taking off from.
Swiss Air 363, you are cleared for takeoff.
Swiss Air 363, cleared for takeoff.
As it is now, it may not have been in this time frame, but now when you are cleared for takeoff, you were cleared for takeoff of a certain runway. And that's for safety reasons. There's been accidents where planes have gone off the end of the runway because they thought they were cleared for takeoff. They were on the wrong runway. They went off the end of the runway because the runway was very short. So you get cleared for takeoff of a specific runway. So they're not giving them cleared for takeoff off a runway, and they're not reading back off a specific runway, so you could have a confusion, especially if the weather was bad or it was very cloudy. You might think you're on one, or they might think you're on one and you're on a different one. So this is something that is true now. You would never ever get cleared for takeoff from a runway. You would get given, you're cleared to take off runway 34 left, for example. So this is something that's just more radio phraseology, and it may be a Hollywood thing, and it may be a time period thing. I'm not going to go back and research and ask guys who were flying these guys that were captain international flights at this place that long ago. They may not even remember. But by far the most Hollywood scene so far in this movie is this scene right here. They're coming up on the back side of the engine. Now, this is a jet engine. It moves itself forward by the jets actually pushing the airplane forward. So of all the places to quickly drive up onto an aircraft, this would basically be the absolute worst place to go. If you move your car another 20 feet to the right, you wouldn't have any jet blast coming at you. Now, I've seen videos of people walking behind a plane where the engines are idling and it throws them. So if you're trying to race up quickly, there's no way you're going to race up to a plane when it is propelling itself forward by pushing the air backwards and you're driving up behind that air. It's never going to work. They could have driven up in a lot of different places. They could have driven up through the middle of the landing gear. There's plenty of space there. They could have driven up through there, shot out the tires, done a bunch of other things. So of all the places, that is definitely the most Hollywood thing of this scene so far. All right, let's get back to Argo. don't know why, but as soon as they said that they could start drinking and those people started hugging, I started thinking about it was a flight crew that was so excited they could finally drink on this deadhead.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's our pleasure to announce that alcoholic beverages are now available as
Of course.
And obviously that's not what they're hugging about. They're hugging about they're out of the airspace. And now that I say it, it reminds me of a cockpit confessionals for a later story. Now, I've flown out of the Middle East as a passenger, just like what they're doing here. That was a dry area, meaning that there was no alcohol served in that country. But I don't remember this announcement. I asked a friend of mine and a couple other pilots that I know that have flown out commercially from the Middle East, and I said, do you ever remember making this announcement? And they said no. So I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I'm just saying that I don't remember ever happening to me or something that they're doing right now. There's a few things that Hollywood loves when it comes to aviation. Wings that don't have fuel or cables in them. They love dumping fuel in the air. They love engines that are continually spooling up for an unlimited amount of time throughout the scene. In this scene, these engines are spooling up for like 30 to 45 seconds, and that's not how it really works in real life. You push them up, and then in our case, there's an auto throttle, so it kicks them up. It takes a few seconds for them to spool up, but it definitely doesn't take this long. These engines are winding up the entire time as they're taking off. That's not how it works. Something else that caught my eye is it looks like they were shooting this movie and doing it from a parking area, not an actual runway. Notice these lines right here and these boxes. Those are actually used to indicate a parking spot. So it will say spot 93. And that allows us, as we're coming in, to be able to see that we're parking in the right spot. Because obviously if you turn into the wrong parking spot, it's a little bit hard to go backwards on these planes. That's not really a big deal, but it's just something that caught my eye. It doesn't look like they're on an actual runway here. However, the most Hollywood thing from this scene is actually the speed at which everything is happening. This is a performance slip from a 747. These are the numbers that we use for takeoff. Now, this number right here is the number at which we pull back on the yoke to start flying up in the air. Now, granted, this is a 400, and they're not flying a 400 in this movie, but it gives you kind of an idea of the weights for the planes to take off and the speed that we're going at. There are 3 different speeds on here, but this is the one right here which really matters because that's the one that they're actually rotating off the ground. And you'll see in this scene here, the cop cars are actually up next to them. So that means they were able to catch up and drive behind the jet blast engine and then accelerate all the way to get in front of them and then be there with them when they took off. There's not a lot of cop cars, especially at this time, that could go that fast. So that is 100% Hollywood. I referenced some of the crazy things that flight crews do while we're on our layovers. If you haven't seen the Cockpit Confessional series, you're going to want to watch this video right here. And if you want to see some actual aviation...
Yeah, the Cockpit Confessionals are actually pretty damn good.
Coming up. Hey 7-4 crew, welcome back. If you don't know me, my name's Kelsey. I'm a 747 pilot. My channel 7-4 here is all about aviation. Today I'm here in Charleston, South Carolina. If you remember, the hotel that we stay at in Charleston faces a pool and there's a bunch of people out there, so I can't show you the view from my hotel, but that's where I'm at. Hopefully you've already seen Cockpit Confessionals #1, and if you haven't, this is definitely not a video that you want to see and watch with your kids. Most of my videos are very family friendly. This involves nudity, people going to jail, things like that, so probably not the best thing to watch with your family. Also, I don't know, nor have I ever participated in any of these stories, even though I sometimes tell them in first person because I think it makes the video better. I am not involved in any of these stories.
Sound like some bullshit to me.
Let's get into it. If you have a story of something you did with your crew that got out of hand, send it to my Instagram, @74gear, which is coincidentally why this first story happened. One of my most liked and shared pictures from last year was a picture of this Lambo that we were transporting. Unfortunately, most pilots are never going to make enough money to afford a brand new Lambo like this. Well, at least not on your typical pilot salary only. But that didn't stop this guy. During this short flight, it was just a captain and a first officer, and in the middle of the flight, the captain told the first officer he was going to jump up and stretch his legs, which is totally normal. A lot of times in the middle of the flight, we'll jump up and grab some food or go to the bathroom or things like that. So after about 10 minutes passed, the first officer started to get worried because the captain hadn't came back yet. So he started rigging the seatbelt sign, he started yelling, he made an announcement, which is the public announcement system that goes through the whole airplane. He started making all these different things, trying to reach the captain and tell him to come back up. After the captain didn't respond, he started to get a bit nervous. He started to worry that in this case, maybe the captain had fallen and hurt himself or was having a heart attack.
That was a random pain.
So what he decided to do was leave the plane on autopilot and run back and see if he could find the captain. Now, as you can imagine, this is not something we're ever supposed to do, leaving the plane without anybody up there. But he started thinking, well, if this captain is dying or having a heart attack, I need to help and find out what's going on so I can help save his life. If you've seen some of the Instagram stories that I do, you know that the forward part of a freighter usually doesn't have a lot of space. So it's pretty quick. You can check the galley, check the rest area, check the bathroom and a few seats. It won't take but a couple seconds to check all those things. But he ran and checked all of those, and he couldn't find the captain. So after checking all those spots, there was really only two options. Either one, the captain was in the cargo area of the aircraft, or two, he disappeared like that Nicolas Cage film, Left Behind. The first officer making this decision to go back and do this is really a risky move. If he goes back there and there's an emergency or something happens, there's nobody that controls. And so he's, in a way, risking his job and his life by doing this. As you can imagine, this is a 100% a no-no situation to do, but he made a decision in the best interest of safety, which is our #1 priority, was to find the captain and find out what was going on.
What the fuck is going on?
So he decides to run back into the cargo area and see if he can find the captain. As he starts running through there, he ends up getting to the Ferrari and finding the captain stuck inside the Ferrari. What had happened was... the captain thought it would be a great idea to go get some selfies in this Ferrari while they were in cruise, which, as you can imagine, is not something that we're supposed to ever do. And there was some safety feature on this Ferrari that basically allowed the door to open, but as soon as it closed, he could not open it again because it locked. It worked on some type of a proximity sensor with the key card, and the key card was on the ground at the destination. The captain then instructs the FO to run back to the front of the plane, get into the flight deck, and fly and land the plane. As you can imagine, this is also a big no-no. It's obviously meant to have two pilots in there, so the first officer is now having to fly, work the radios, and do everything. I don't think he declared an emergency or anything. I think he just tried to play it off cool, flew in, landed the plane, and taxied into the gate. Once they got into the gate, then the ground handlers had to actually come up there with the key in order to unlock the door so the captain could get out of the Ferrari. As the story goes, the captain ended up getting fired from this, so obviously not worth it, but sometimes you just gotta do it for the gram. Something that most people don't know is that flight attendants generally don't make a lot of money. I remember asking a friend of mine, how much do you think a flight attendant makes? And she told me, I don't know, they probably make $80,000, $90,000 a year. And while most flight attendants can end up making that much later on in their career, it's definitely not what they make when they are early starting off. So it makes sense that this flight attendant decided to start a side hustle. It's important to understand, in a lot of airlines, they split up the flight attendants and the pilots. So you might only do 2 legs with your flight attendants and then go to separate hotels. Often on the layovers, you as a pilot and the flight attendants always don't meet up to go out and do things together, which I personally don't like. I like hanging out with my crew, going out and having fun on layovers. On this layover, they were domestic, and this flight attendant decided to do her side hustle. The pilots ended up going to a different hotel. I think they'd only done 1 leg with this flight attendant, but they had seen everybody and obviously talked to them before the flight, and after the flight, they waited for them to get off the plane, and they went out and jumped in their separate hotel vans. Once the pilots got to their hotel, they decided to go grab some food. They went out and grabbed some food, and right next to where they were eating, or a block or 2 away, was a strip club, and they thought, let's head out to the strip club, see what's going on. Well, after 30 minutes of being out there on the strip club, the girl that got announced was, let's call her name Tiffany, which is not her name, but let's say Tiffany gets announced to come on stage. Well, Tiffany gets on stage, and both the pilots look at each other and go, no way. It was one of their flight attendants. Basically what happened is the flight attendant that did this flight, what she would do is look at her schedule, call ahead to the different strip clubs, and before she arrived, she would call and make herself the premier or the special person of that night. I don't really know how it all works, but she had a place to stay, transport in and out, so all she had to do was catch an Uber over there and make a bunch of extra money. Well, when she came around to get her tips, she ended up running into these pilots, and they ended up talking, I guess having a good laugh about it, because I ended up hearing about it. Her story behind it was that she's not doing it in her town, so nobody in her friends or family are going to end up seeing her doing this. And at the end of the day, you know, if she wants to go do that for her, gotta make that money.
Turn down for what?
Lol. That's
On
pretty
some of the
funny.
longer layovers, you know that I've told you of stories of going out with the crew and going out and having drinks or going out and partying. Well, this story was like that, but it went really, really wrong. The crew decided to go out and get some drinks, and sometimes you get young flight attendants who don't know quite what their limits are because, hey, we were all 21 once. Well, this crew went out, they had a late night, and they were down in New Orleans, and so they went out, they had a long night. I think they finished at 3 in the morning, and they weren't flying until 4 in the afternoon, so that was plenty of time. Well, this flight attendant, being new to the drinking world, decided to start mixing a bunch of different drinks together, and everybody knows that it's never going to end up well, and that flight attendant ended up being pretty sick at the end of the night. So the crew called it a night, they went back to the hotel, and that was it. Well, the next morning, everybody was fine except this one flight attendant wasn't feeling super great, but it was just a one leg home. And she thought, I can tough it out for one leg, not a big deal. If you're gonna go out and party, you definitely don't want to do more than one leg, especially if you're not feeling really well. Now, I personally don't like to drink more than 1 or 2 drinks when I'm out on a trip because I am such a super baby when it comes to feeling ill. So I might have 1 drink or 2 if I'm on a layover, but I don't like that feeling of feeling hungover. So that's usually the most I'll ever do if I'm about to fly the next day.
He's so lame.
This flight attendant did not
So
have that rule.
lame.
And I realized that all crews always have the option to call out sick if they don't
Kelsey's
feel well
awesome.
enough to fly, but she felt that she could tough it out and do that one leg home. So everybody boarded the plane, everything was secured up, and she said, hey, we're ready to go. Close up the door, taxi, and get ready for takeoff. As you know, the flight crew and cabin crew have the shoulder harnesses that we wear for takeoff and landing. Now, this flight attendant was facing back towards everybody in the cabin, in the front seat of the plane, looking backwards. So when the plane took off, that feeling of getting up in the air made her feel sick. The problem is, because she had her shoulder harnesses on, she couldn't bend over to throw up, which meant she threw up, locked in her seat, all down the front of her dress. Trying to cover her tracks with all the people that were now staring at her, probably feeling sick to themselves, she said, I think I have the flu. If you remember the story from Cockpit Confessionals 1 where I talk about the pilot coming down to pick up the pizza in nothing but his Reeboks,
Papa John's.
this story took place in the exact same hotel. I don't know how this flight crew and airline were kicked out by this point after that Reebok pizza incident, but what happened is this crew was getting out of the van and they started hearing a bunch of hollering coming from one of the rooms. Now sometimes the flight crews won't go out if it's cold out or we're being cheap. We'll just hang out and buy a bottle of something, hang out in the room and just have some good laughs. I've done it before, it's a lot of fun, it's kind of like a tiny little house party.
You cheap bastard.
Now it's really strange because in most hotel rooms you don't have windows that you can open up or anything like that, and I think there's something about suicide prevention, but every now and again we end up at hotels with big balconies, so I don't understand the rules of when you can have a window that doesn't open up but a balcony that you can walk out to. But anyways, this hotel had this balcony and there was people that were hanging out there. As the crew was getting out, they heard this loud crashing explosion and glass breaking. And then they heard someone screaming like they were at a frat house. One of the pilots decided that he was part of a rock band and decided to rip the TV off of the wall and throw it off of the balcony. After that story, they were definitely kicked out of that hotel. Finally, this last embarrassing story involves strip clubs, strippers, and going to jail, and the best first officer you could ever ask for.
It wasn't me.
I know that I have a lot of these crazy stories of pilots and strippers and strip clubs. I just want to let you know that is not the norm, but, you know, these are the crazy stories that you hear when you're out flying around, so that's why you're hearing them. So these two pilots decided to spend some of their hard-earned money. They went out to the strip club and just started hanging out and having some drinks. Well, one of these pilots is known for being a heavy partier. About 1 a.m., the first pilot said, hey man, I'm done, I'm ready to go home.
Incredibly lame.
He left, went back to the hotel, and called it a night. Well, about 10 a.m. the next morning, his phone kept ringing. He was going, I don't know who this is, and he didn't want to pick up the phone. It was the captain. The captain was in jail. He said, bro, I need you to come and get me out of jail because our flight's at 3 and I need to make the flight. The first officer, having the best crew resource management I've ever heard of, decided to jump in an Uber, run down there, go to the ATM and withdraw enough money to cover the bail. After he bailed the captain out, they ran back, grabbed their flight, and flew out of the country. Because all this happened outside of the US. Once they got up in the flight, the first officer was like, bro, what happened last night? The captain thought he developed this connection with one of the strippers. he was spending a lot of money, and she was standing there talking to him, so he ended up getting her number and thinking, oh, we have this great connection.
Could you imagine?
Idiot!
Could you
Then
imagine
what
having
happened
to
after the strip club
explain
closed, He
that?
decided he would hang outside of the strip club for her to leave so he could talk to her more.
Oh.
Now, I don't know the rules of strip clubs, but I'm pretty sure that violates all of them. The stripper ended up walking home, and the pilot kept talking to her and nagging her. Eventually, she started to get very irritated because he was drunk, and who knows what he was asking for. But she started to get really upset and said, if you don't leave me alone, I'm going to call the cops. Well, as you can imagine, he did not leave her alone. She ended up calling the cops. The cops came and picked him up and threw him in jail.
Bad boy. What you gonna do? No, don't do that. Never.
Now I'm told that after this incident, the pilot is not allowed to fly back to that country anymore. So I think the airline at first didn't find out, and then they put something on his schedule having him fly back to that country, and said, no, I can't go back there anymore. I don't know that that's true, but that makes sense to me. Being stuck in a foreign jail by yourself with no one to help you would feel a lot like being stuck on an island all by yourself. If you haven't seen the Hollywood versus reality I did on Castaway, starring Tom Hanks, I'll put a link to it right here. I look forward to hearing from you. Until then, keep your side up.
Tathlina Lake.
It's always the redheaded kid that's kicking people. I don't know what that's all about. You all in the 7-4 crew have been sending in a lot of aviation meme videos lately. So today we're doing aviation video memes. Coming up. Hey 7-4 crew, welcome back. If you don't know me, my name's Kelsey. I'm a 747 pilot. My channel, 7-4 Gear, is all about aviation. In the last aviation meme video, I asked you guys to start sending me aviation meme videos because I thought it'd be cool to make one video with all of them in one spot. If you find more aviation memes that you want to see on one of these videos, the easiest way to do it is just send it to my Instagram. Keep sending those in, but for now, let's get into it. It's always the redheaded kid that's kicking people. I don't know what that's all about. I've never seen a first class like that. I've never seen a first class like that now. Obviously, back in the 60s and 70s, they had some pretty swanky first class lounges, but there's really nothing that swanky now like you'd have maybe in the 60s or 70s. But a funny story about something similar that happened was I was traveling internationally. It was probably like a 10 or 11 hour flight, and I was traveling in business class. They do close those curtains, but sometimes those curtains are mesh, and that means the people on the other side can see you. Well, I had just spent 4 or 5 hours sleeping. I got up to go to the bathroom. As I was getting to the back to go to the bathroom, I could see that there was this guy sitting in the middle seat in the coach area. He had nowhere to sleep. It was the middle of the night, and I've done that before. I've done a 12-hour flight in coach in the middle, and it is, you'd pay anything to get a little bit of sleep. He couldn't sleep at all. You could just see it on his face how irritated he was, and I was just walking into the bathroom thinking, I know exactly how you feel. Of course, he was probably thinking, God, I hate that guy. But that is one of the advantages of traveling for work, is that if we're doing a long international flight, they put us in business or first class when we're traveling, because if we got to sleep and then get somewhere and then maybe have a short rest and then operate, they don't want us to be super tired. If you are sitting in coach and you see somebody coming back from first class that's walking into the bathroom, before you start thinking horrible thoughts of who they are, just realize it could be a normal guy like me that's wearing a hoodie that's just going to work.
And I choose you in 100 lifetimes. I choose you.
Sweet girl.
100 worlds I'd find you.
No. I wonder how many flight attendants have seen this meme. If you drink the coffee that the flight attendants make for you, it's kind of like this.
That's
The
pretty
reason
good.
I say that is because the water that they use for the coffee, it comes from the belly of the plane, which is not cleaned very much. It's a special tank and they clean it, but I wouldn't say it's super hygienic. For the most part, I don't think flight attendants would give you toilet water, but that just goes to show you how nice you should be to your flight attendants, because they are bringing you your food and your drinks while you're flying, so just keep that in mind. making no corrections at all. I know a lot of the pilots that were off for a bunch of time were worried about this kind of thing happening, but the sad thing about this video is you could think, oh, maybe it was a really windy or gusty day, but if we rewind this, you're going to see that the windsock is totally deflated, so there's literally no wind. They're just seesawing down the runway, which means they probably came in too fast. You would think after you do something a bunch of times that you wouldn't have any problem like that. After 3 months of not flying, that it would be rusty. But if I take, let's say, a month where I don't fly the 7.4 and I get back in it, it takes me like a couple hours to kind of get everything situated and find the things that I want. And sometimes I miss the flow or the rhythm that I'm doing things. So it's true that after 3 months, you're going to be a little bit rusty, but it comes back pretty quick.
And I'll just get us started.
We'll need that to live.
The Simpsons shows are running forever. That's like the show that will never ever die, it seems like. It's another one of those where you're after quarantine, and I actually had something like this. You know, I fly 3 different versions of the Boeing 747. I fly the Dreamlifter, I fly a normal 747-400. Well, I also fly the passenger and the cargo version of that, and then I fly the 747-8. That Dash 8 has a lot of different buttons and ways to get things that is different than the normal 400, and I hadn't flown one in 2 months. The way that the checklists are done on the Dash 8 is actually electronically, and so if you're not used to flying it, there was a special button that you have to hit in order to pull it up, and I couldn't remember where that button was. I kept looking everywhere, and I could see the captain was looking at me like, what is this guy doing? And I didn't want to ask, because I was like, I know where this button is, and I kept looking everywhere for it. So it's kind of something like that, but you can't lift the gear up while it's on the ground. I talked about that in the Con Air Hollywood versus reality.
Why are you running? Why are you running?
Welcome to Nigeria.
I don't know how many Africans are here that are following this channel, but I didn't make that meme, but it is pretty funny. Flying in Africa is a little bit like the Wild West. There's obviously a lot of airspace there. There's not a lot of coverage, not a lot of radar coverage. Things are done a little bit differently over there. Not that differently, where they're using ramps to try to launch planes off the ground, but you get the idea. Now, I've flown pilots from, I think, 6 out of the 7 different continents, Antarctica being not the people I've flown with. But I will say that I don't think that there's really any difference of where you go to get your flight training as far as how good of a pilot you become. It really comes down to how professional you are, how good you want to be at your craft. So it doesn't matter if you came from Africa and you learned how to fly, or you came from the US and you went to the best school. If you really pursue being a professional and being the very best pilot you can be, it doesn't really matter where you learn to fly.
Pull up.
Might have enough
Terrain.
fuel.
Terrain.
But I doubt it.
Terrain.
You would think an animal that is trained to fly would do something better than bombing into the ground like it was his first landing. I'm not really good on birds, so if you know what type of bird that was, let me know. It looked like a flying penguin, which I know those things don't fly. If you aren't familiar with that noise, it's basically a noise trained to fly.
I missed that one.
The very
totally.
best pilot that I don't think.
Oh shit.
Terrain.
Oh.
Terrain.
You would think an animal that is trained to fly would do something better than bombing into the ground like it was his first landing. I'm not really good on birds, so if you know what type of bird that was, let me know. It looked like a flying penguin, which I know those things don't fly. If you aren't familiar with that noise, it's basically a noise that will happen when you're going down too fast and the plane thinks that you might have a collision with the ground. You'll hear that don't sink, things like that. It's basically a safety precaution. Obviously birds don't have it, when flying penguins or whatever that was don't have it either. But I just don't understand how it hit the ground so hard and bounced up so high. That's pretty impressive.
Hop on a G700 private jet made by this company. It costs $75 million and flies at Mach 0.925.
Gulfstream, obviously.
So a flight to Paris would be fun. Ekrans. Concorde. Nope. Michon.
What is Lear?
Nope. What is a Gulfstream jet?
It's like the first and only time I'd ever get the right answer at Jeopardy. You would think somebody that's smart enough to get onto Jeopardy would know that the Concorde goes over the speed of sound, which is that Mach 0.92 or whatever number they give. That's in reference to the speed of sound. So you'd say 0.92 would be 92% of the speed of sound, and obviously everybody knows the Concorde goes faster than the speed of sound. That's what made it so famous. You would think somebody smart enough to get on Jeopardy would know that if I can figure that out. But if you put me on that show, I would probably get 1 out of 100 faster than the people who are actually on that show, so I want to be too critical of them. love his face at the end. Just like, I don't know what to do right now. I don't know if that video is really a meme as much as it'd be something for like a viral debrief. If you haven't seen the viral debrief series when I explain different viral aviation videos, go check it out. I'll put a link to it right here. I look forward to hearing from you. Until then, keep the blue side up.
What do we got? Top 10 things. Well, that wrecked my ears. Oh, I can't wait. Till this game is like that.
There's nothing crazy about it. I took off, and as I was climbing away from the deck, I put my gear up, realized I had a gear malfunction, so immediately pulled the power back, slowed the aircraft down so I wouldn't overspeed the landing gear, and then went just above the ship at about 2,000 feet and started talking to Pat, who's another jet pilot in the tower that controls us when we land. Also up there, if we have a problem, they have their book reader. They help us walk through the situation since we're a single pilot aircraft. Overall, I flew by the ship. I did an approach at 300 feet so he could see my landing gear and give me an idea of what was going on and determine that my nose gear did not come back down. At this point, it's time to figure out how do I get the jet back on the deck safely with only 3 landing gear. So eventually Major Murphy came over the radio and told me that the ship had this amazing invention that was like basically a stool that was built specifically for this reason. The ship has a lighting system on what we call spot 7 that we use to land at an exact spot every time. So the difference with this landing was that I was going to step it down 50, 40, 30, 20 feet to make sure I was aligned and stabilized before Major Murphy would clear me to land at 20 feet, so that it had the best chance to actually put the nose on the stool. So I come in, and at this point I've kind of forgotten that I don't have nose gear. I'm just focused on landing. That's what I decided I had to do. So I'm at 20 feet stabilized, and I can't see the stool. I don't even know it's there. I didn't see it coming over the end of the ship. I looked for it. I remember looking for it and thinking, oh boy, this is going to get interesting. So I never saw the stool. So I go to idle. I remember my main gear hitting, and all of a sudden my nose dropping, and it dropped more than I expected. But at that point, I was along for the ride. I don't remember feeling it bounce like it did on the videotape. I remember feeling it just got hit, and that was it. But then I had to sit there for a minute and remember how to shut the jet off and everything. It was a pretty big relief. I didn't realize how much I was shaking.
We might make this on fuel, but it's gonna be tight. I'm an idiot. I forgot to fill the tanks.
Listen, I didn't realize that nobody was on the flight deck when I came over to land in case something went wrong and went bad. Now, that was neat having everyone come out and congratulate me and stuff. It was a little overwhelming at first. For a moment, I just wanted to catch my breath. We pride ourselves at landing on the ship perfectly like this in the same spot every time and doing the same thing over and over again. But there's no way to train to land it.
Man, what a rush. Like, just the way he gets pulled forward there is just nuts. I'd like to see how those arrestor, like the cable hooks, are actually connected. It's amazing the force that they can take. Like, not the cable itself, I've seen how that works, but the actual hook on the back of the jet is just, the amount of strength that thing needs to have is unreal. He wasn't happy with that landing. F-35. Man, are they ever cool. The sheer strength of that thing, man, is unreal.
When the order came to start measuring the C-130 Hercules in preparation for an aircraft carrier landing and launch test, engineers at the Naval Air Test Center thought someone must be joking. With a wingspan of 132 feet, few could imagine that the C-130 would be able to operate off of a flight deck only 1,017 feet long and approximately 250 feet wide. But the Department of the United States Navy needed to find out the feasibility of landing large planes on carriers for resource transportation. As U.S. carrier fleets were being deployed around the world to increasingly more remote locations, the existing supply logistics relying on the Grumman C-1 trader were proving insufficient. Configured for carrier operations, the small twin-engine C-1 had comparatively limited range and payload capacity. To solve the problem, the Navy assembled a team of shock pilots and engineers to figure out how to land a colossal C-130 on the supercarrier USS Forrestal. Given the considerable uncertainty around the experiment, plans were made to toss the aircraft overboard with a crane should it prove unable to take off again. Hercules. The massive C-130 Hercules was first used by the Navy in 1960, when 4 of these aircraft were on Antarctic missions. Those models featured skis, but soon after, the Marine Corps procured 46 more Hercules planes for transport and to use as aerial tankers that could refuel fighter jets and attack planes. The aircraft was created after the United States Air Force Tactical Air Command sent in requirements for Lockheed to generate a combat transport with turboprop engines. It first flew in August of 1954 for the Air Force, and in January of 1960 for the Navy. As a tanker, the Hercules could refuel to other planes at the same time and could carry 3,600 gallons of fuel. Refueling happened through 2 detachable pylon pods located under the outer wing. The Lockheed KC-130F version of the Hercules entered service for the Navy in the Pacific on February 1st, 1962.
That's so
The plane
cool.
was particularly useful for its ability to refuel aircraft, and several of the airframes were placed in the newly designated Marine Aerial Refueler Transport Squadron 152 under the Marine Corps. About a year after the Marines received these Hercules planes, the squadron was sent along with the expeditionary forces to assist F-4 and A-4 fighters in Vietnam. Still, the United States Armed Forces wondered whether the Hercules could be deployed from water rather than land to facilitate long-range cross-continental missions. The USS Forrestal. The USS Forrestal was a supercarrier commissioned in 1955 and named after the first Secretary of Defense, James Forrestal. The vessel was the United States' first of its class and the United States' first supercarrier. Unlike the subsequent nuclear carriers, the USS Forrestal harnessed conventional power. During its construction at Newport News Shipbuilding, the ship saw several design adjustments, including the replacement of a planned telescoping bridge for a traditional island structure. An angled landing deck and steam catapults were added to the flight deck, incorporating British design ideas. USS Forrestal was first launched on December 11, 1954. It entered service on October 1st of the following year. Sailors and officers affectionately referred to the vessel as the FID, short for First in Defense, and also a reference to James Forrestal. This nickname was integrated as a slogan on the vessel's insignia and patch. After some notable fires aboard the ship, the USS Forrestal also gained the monikers Forest Fire, Firestall, and USS Zippo. The worst of these fires took place in 1967. The supercarrier served in the Atlantic Ocean, the Mediterranean Sea, and the Pacific Ocean for almost 4 decades. In the end, it was decommissioned and turned into a museum. After several attempts to save the ship were unsuccessful, it was ultimately towed to Brownsville, Texas for scrap in February of 2014. By December of the following year, the ship had been entirely scrapped. The plan.
The plan.
The C-2 Greyhound is presently still one of the largest transport aircraft designed for carrier operations. Before the plane entered its service, however, the military was curious to see whether the C-130 Hercules could be used for logistics support by taking off and landing on a carrier. Tests using the Hercules and supercarrier USS Forrestal were scheduled for October of 1963. The theory behind the novel test was named Carrier Onboard Delivery, or COD, sometimes Supercarrier Onboard Delivery. The concept was created following the realization that aircraft carriers should be resupplied with urgently needed fuel and tools without having to return to port. Commencing in the early 1960s, the Grumman C-1 trader was actually in charge of resupplying the carriers. However, the twin-piston engine had 2 flaws that limited the operations. the 300-mile range, and the 8,500-pound or 3,856-kilogram payload capacity. The Chief of Naval Operations, the most senior naval officer in the Department of the Navy, wanted a bigger transport plane to land on the USS Forrestal. He ordered the feasibility study to determine whether the C-130 Hercules could be used as a carrier onboard delivery aircraft. Aside from both greater range and payload capacity, the Hercules was a more stable and reliable aircraft. If it could replenish carriers in the middle of the ocean, it would resolve multiple concerns. The crew. The Navy assembled crew to carry out the supercarrier onboard delivery was formed by Lieutenant James H. Flatley III, Pilot Lieutenant Commander W.W. Stovall, his co-pilot and flight engineer E.F. Brennan, and Lockheed's test pilot Ted H. Limmer Jr. Lieutenant James H. Flatley III would later recall in Commander Robert R. Powell's book Wave Off, A History of LSOs and Shipboard Landings that, quote, they could not find a C-130 crew interested in going on the boat.
All is happening.
So the Naval Air Test Center fingered 2 fighter pilots who couldn't even spell propeller. They gave us the keys to a Marine KC-130. Reports say that when the assignment reached Lieutenant James H. Flatley III, he was surprised and thought that higher command was playing a prank on him. According to writer and Lockheed chief engineer at the time, Joseph Earl Dabney, Flatley asked, quote, operate a C-130 off an aircraft carrier? Somebody's got to be kidding. But of course the unheard of test was not a joke. It was a genuine curiosity that the United States Department of the Navy needed to resolve. Once the team was assembled, training commenced for the record-breaking tests. In Powell's book, Flatley stated that their preparation for the historical moment was rather brief. Quote, we had one 4-hour familiarization flight with Lockheed's chief test pilot before making exactly 100 test landings on the runway at Patuxent River. Tests. Despite the quick preparation and experimental nature of the projects, Lieutenant Flatley made history by landing the Hercules transport plane on the deck of the USS Forrestal in 1963. The test broke the record by using Hercules as the largest onboard aircraft to successfully land and take off from an aircraft carrier. The only modifications Lockheed made to the original C-130 was giving it a smaller nose landing gear hole and an upgraded anti-skid braking system. They also removed the underwing refueling pods. They carried out these changes at the Lockheed plant in Marietta soon before conducting the tests. Flatley expressed afterward, quote, the big worry was whether we could meet the maximum sink rate of 9 feet per second. They not only accomplished this goal, but got even better numbers. In total, the team made 21 full-stop landings and 29 touch-and-go landings during 4 distinct trips. The Hercules used was an in-service Marine Corps KC-130F tanker. For the first test, they traveled off the coast of Jacksonville, Florida, and conducted it on October 30th. The USS Forrestal's flight deck was cleared, and the arresting wires were removed because the Hercules lacked a tailhook. The weather complicated the mission, since the crew had to deal with 40-knot winds and gusts of up to 60 knots. Despite these difficulties, they were resolute in their purpose. The Hercules had to approach the USS Forrestal a total of 42 times that day to conduct 19 touch-and-go landings. Lockheed's chief engineer would later recall that Art E. Flock, who was on the supercarrier to witness the tests, had stated, quote, the sea was pretty big that day. I was up on the captain's bridge. I watched a man on the ship's bow as that bow must have gone up and down 30 feet. The ship was sped up to 10 knots to fight the wind direction and to reduce yaw motion. When the plane landed, it had 40 to 50 knots hitting the nose. Art E. Flock also recalled, quote, that airplane stopped right opposite the captain's bridge. It was cheering and laughing. There on the side of the fuselage, a big sign had been painted that said, look ma, no hook. The rest of the tests were conducted in moderately rough seas about 500 nautical miles, or 930 kilometers off the coast of Boston in the North Atlantic Ocean. These November 8th tests broke the record for the largest and heaviest plane to ever land on an aircraft carrier, a record that still stands. To carry out the landing, Flatley put the propellers in reverse pitch while he was still 10 or 15 feet in the air to land. At the moment of touchdown, the Hercules was placed in full reverse and brought to a stop in 270 feet. For that first landing, the Hercules weighed 85,000 pounds, but the ambitious testing required increasing the weight up to 121,000 pounds. For the maximum weight tests, the crew used 745 feet to take off and 460 feet to land. By the end of the tests, the aircraft was able to even take off from the spot on the deck where it had landed last. At that point, the Hercules wingtip was only 15 feet away from the ship's control island, leaving no margin for any mistakes.
That's crazy.
No room for error. After the record for the biggest aircraft to land on a carrier was broken, the Navy realized that while it was indeed possible to land a Hercules on a supercarrier, doing so would be impractical and unfeasible for regular operations. The room for error was simply too narrow. Furthermore, the The Hercules was too big to fit on the elevators or to stay in the hangars, which meant traveling by sea with it would require significant modifications, if it could even be done. By 1966, the C-2 Greyhound program was operational, addressing most of the concerns that these tests were seeking to zone into. For his record-breaking actions, Lieutenant James H. Flatley III was given the Distinguished Flying Cross. The Hercules plane they used was deployed to Vietnam and later on to the Middle East for Operation Desert Storm and Iraqi Freedom. It was finally retired in 2003 to the National Naval Aviation Museum in Pensacola, Florida.
Poor thing looks like it's just in ruins.
The American military's ability to deploy its troops anywhere in the world on short notice is one of the many reasons that make it the most powerful army in the world. When talking about these grandiose missions, large cargo aircraft such as the Lockheed C-5 Galaxy or the Boeing C-17 Roadmaster III typically come to mind. But apart from these larger-than-life planes, a secret fleet of small Swiss planes have also become fundamental for these dangerous operations.
Okay, what
Their
do we
role is
got
even more critical
here?
as the U.S. continues its fight against terrorism.
We got about 600-700
The Swiss
pounds
plane's
of
name is
fuel
the
left.
U-28, and since June 2019, it has an official nickname, Draco, the Latin word for dragon, and a constellation in the far northern sky. Since their introduction almost 15 years ago, these modest planes have become an increasingly important component of U.S. counterterrorism operations, with intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance missions all over
We
the
should
world.
have enough fuel.
Although small, the roar of the Draco
It'll be
is
tight.
mighty. Off the shelf. In October 2005, the Air Force's 319 Special Operations Squadron received a new aircraft. It was the small but mighty U-28A, a single-engine turboprop passenger and cargo aircraft. After flying its first mission in 2006, 4 U-28A became part of the 319th Squadron. As of 2020, the Air Force's U-28 fleet consists of 28 aircraft in total. The U-28 is the military version of the Swiss-made Pleiades PC-12, and was initially purchased at a unit price of $3.5 million. The U in its designation stands for utilitarian. The plane has been popular with commercial users from all over the world since 1991. The U-28 is a relatively cheap aircraft and runs for about $500 per flight hour. It carries up to 9 passengers and cargo from a remote airstrip to another hub 1,500 miles away, flying well above terrain at a cruising speed of 310 miles per hour. The plane can successfully take off in 2,450 feet and land in 3,050. It is excellent at landing on dirt and grass strips, making it handy for Middle East missions. Since the beginning, the United States Special Operations Command and the Air Force Special Operations Command saw a lot of potential in the U-28. According to the Air Force Special Operations Command's Captain Kirsten K. Duncan, quote, "These aircraft give us the flexibility to move smaller amounts of people and cargo to remote or austere airfields that our larger aircraft could not use." Secret technology. The exact intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance capabilities of the U-28 are classified. Not all of the 28 U-28 share the same configuration and payload, and different iterations of the aircraft have appeared throughout the years. Although quite similar to the airplane's civilian version in terms of basic design, most of the U-28A models carry state-of-the-art equipment. Within the last decade, the Air Force Special Operations Command has upgraded several of their U-28s with a secretive new configuration known as EQ+. According to Pentagon budget documents, this update includes a sensor turret, electro-optical and high-definition infrared cameras, and intelligence systems capable of geolocating and monitoring hostile communications. This equipment also allows the aircraft to fly at higher altitudes. Most importantly, it enables it to operate at a further distance from its target, which reduces risks and makes it less likely to be spotted by the subject of interest. Despite being a relatively small aircraft, all U-28s have avant-garde communications and data-sharing software. This allows the crew to send intel they gather from their missions to their command centers in real time. Like other Special Ops aircraft, the U-28s keep such a low profile and appear so similar to their civilian version that they often go unnoticed during their clandestine missions. To maintain such camouflage, these planes tend to fly with civilian-style paint colors, rather than the standard Air Force Special Operations Command gray color scheme. Missions. Since the exact details about the missions completed over the years by the U-28 aren't public information, the internet is rife with speculation and theories. According to most of them, the U-28 is precisely what its U prefix stands for, a utility aircraft. The U-28's extended list of capabilities, mixed with its low operating cost and discreet design, have made it ideal for small counterterrorism missions worldwide. Since its initial deployment in 2006, the U-28 has been essential in ISR, which stands for Intelligence, Surveillance, and Reconnaissance missions. The mission's primary objective is to bring support in humanitarian, search and rescue, conventional, and special operations missions, such as pursuing rebel pickups in deserted areas and eavesdropping on suspicious radio communications. An unofficial report has stated that the U-28 fleet had accumulated over 500,000 flight hours. This aircraft has completed successful missions all across the Middle East, Afghanistan, and Africa, and is said to be operated from small airstrips in Uganda, South Sudan, Ethiopia, Djibouti, and mostly Burkina Faso. Between 2011 and 2012, the 318 Squadron flew a series of sorties in the Philippines as part of Operation Enduring Freedom Philippines. In it, U.S. special operators worked with Filipino security agents in the battle against Abu Sayyaf, an Islamist terrorist group, as well as Jamaah Islamiyah, a regional Islamist terrorist organization. Both groups have ties to Al-Qaeda, who have committed crimes against civilians, mostly foreigners, throughout the country. Departing from their bases in Germany, U-28 performed similar sorties across Europe and Africa. In these missions, the planes flew 133 sorties and moved just over 27,000 pounds of cargo. Most of these missions were to or from the Entebbe International Airport in Uganda. This was the American mission's hub, helping African troops in 4 countries to eradicate the Lord's Resistance Army rebel group and a tireless effort to apprehend its infamous leader, Joseph Kony. For over 20 years, Kony and his organization had terrorized Central Africa, abducting hundreds of children to fight as child soldiers or child trafficking. The aircraft also flew sorties in Latin America from Sorocano Air Base in Honduras. Although it isn't clear what mission the aircraft supported in the region, the planes likely moved cargo and personnel around as part of both counter-drug and counter-terrorism operations. A terrible accident. Although the U-28 has completed dozens of successful sorties, not all crews have been as lucky. In 2017, it was reported that a U-28 aircraft sustained an accident near Clovis Municipal Airport in New Mexico. The pilot, co-pilot, and a combat systems officer were lost upon impact. The crash, which happened on March 14th, occurred during a training sortie. A thorough investigation concluded that the crew lost control of the aircraft when it entered a stall at low altitude during an emergency landing procedure. There were no indications of a significant mechanical malfunction. The investigation also inferred that the crew delayed the actions that were necessary to prevent the accident. Lost in the tragedy were pilot Captain Andrew Becker, Combat Systems Officer Captain Kenneth Dalga, and co-pilot First Lieutenant Frederick Gallagher. Everybody loves Draco. After more than a decade of completed missions, the U-28 finally received an official nickname. In June 2019, the Air Force Special Operations Command publicly announced that the aircraft would be known as Draco. In Latin, the word Draco means dragon. It is also a large constellation in the far northern sky. Not long after the official announcement, many Air Force officials commented on how much they and the Special Ops team treasured Draco. Colonel Andrew Jett, 492nd Special Operations Wing Commander and former Draco pilot, commented, quote, "Our partners may not have known the personal names of the crew members, but they always know Draco. There's a tremendous amount of recognition and respect when a crew member identifies him or herself as being a member of Draco. I'm thrilled about the exceptional reputation Draco has built over the 13-plus years of the program, and it's now codified as the permanent aircraft name and is something every member of Draco, past and present, can take pride in." Air Force Lieutenant Colonel Chad Anthony, commander of the 319th Special Ops Squadron, said in a statement that, quote, "The Draco has come to mean unparalleled special operations intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance support, especially to the men and women on the ground in the line of fire. Aircrew and special operators who have flown and worked with the Pilatus U-28A have known it as Draco since its first combat deployment in June 2006. Air Force Colonel Robert Masitis said that he was happy the U-28 had gotten an official nickname because the plane deserved it. He stated, quote, "I'm glad to see we're bringing this initiative to fruition after all this time, as the U-28 has become so much more than the single-engine, nondescript utility aircraft we brought into the service over a decade ago." The Air Force declared that the plane's new nickname had been approved in May 2019, but plans to officially name it date back to as far as 2010. In the line of fire. The United States isn't the only country with a small plane dedicated to conducting long-range intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance special operations. Other countries such as Finland, Switzerland, and Bulgaria have their own variant of the Pilatus PC-12, which conducts similar missions. The Draco has proven itself to be worthy of such a long history in U.S. military service. It has excellent performance, and it's a very adaptable plane. On top of everything, it's also cheap to maintain and is very discreet. It comes as no surprise that the aircraft has been used for over a decade. There's no doubt that the newly christened Draco will keep watch and perform hundreds more special ops missions worldwide for years to come. The first operational U.S. aircraft specifically designed as a night fighter was the P-61 Black Widow. Created in 1940 by Northrop Aviation in collaboration with the British Royal Air Force, the P-61 was also the first aircraft designed to use radar. With its mysterious appearance and name, the Black Widow ruled the night in the waning months of World War II. It would even collect the last confirmed air-to-air kill on the last night of the war. When World War II began, the U.S. Army Corps and the British Royal Air Force flew mostly outdated aircraft compared to their war-ready counterparts on the Axis side. By the time the war came to an end, however, iconic and revolutionary advancements, such as those found in the jet-powered Gloster Meteor and the Bell P-59 Aerocomet, were just beginning to push the Allies over the top in the race for technological air superiority. The way aircraft were utilized was also changing as the war neared an end. Night fighters would soon become their own category of aircraft. A night fighter, or all-weather interceptor, was a fighter concept adapted for use at night in low-visibility situations. The idea was born during the First World War. Still, it wasn't until after the catastrophic bombing raids over Europe, particularly the London Blitz in 1940, that military air forces really found a need for a plane catering specifically to these types of missions. The Northrop Aircraft Corporation, located in California, had only been in active operation since 1939, mainly as a subcontractor for larger aircraft manufacturers. It was definitely an unlikely candidate to develop the world's first night fighter. More prominent corporations such as Lockheed, Grumman, and Douglas were already committed beyond their capacity, stocking America's existing aircraft fleet. Northrop's availability gave it a window of opportunity. The company won the contract to design from scratch an aircraft with the characteristics needed for a nighttime fighter jet. Specifically, a request for proposals called for a high ceiling to intercept the enemy at high speeds, extended loader time to circle a defended zone slowly and undetected.
It's going so slowly. This flight is so much longer than I thought it was going to be.
The fighter would also need to be capable
and the
of
weather
incorporating the airborne intercept, the newest device in radar technology. In November 1940, the P-61 Black Widow project began. It was designed as a sleek aircraft with a mysterious look to it. One could clearly picture it lurking in the night, claiming its victims before they knew they were being hit. It was also a rather large aircraft for a fighter, at 50 feet long and with a wingspan of 66 feet. The P-61 was a twin-boom design with a crew consisting of a pilot, gunner, and a new member, a radar engineer. He would operate the compact airborne interceptor, specifically designed to fit inside an aircraft, leaving out the middleman who had previously relayed instructions from radar, operated out of ground stations. The airborne intercept was encapsulated in the nose of the aircraft. This rotating 30-inch scanner receiver dish antenna would sweep the sky with a knife-like beam. When used, it reduced the ground echoes that plagued long-wave radars at low altitude. The shorter wavelength enhanced accuracy, guiding interceptors within just 100 yards of intruders in total darkness. This radical shift was the main reason the Black Widow could fly at night, as the device allowed pilots to navigate and locate airborne enemies in real time. Red-colored cockpit lighting was another innovation that further aided vision in night fighting. The Black Widow's lethal bite could rival any that the enemy had to offer. It carried 4 20mm Hispano M2 cannons positioned in the lower fuselage, and 4 50 caliber M2 Browning machine guns in the dorsal gun turret. The latter could be operated remotely, allowing either the gunner or radar operator to control the weapon. The pilot could also lock it in a forward-facing position. Although the turret was capable of impressive 360-degree rotation and 90-degree coverage above the aircraft, The unique system was said to often have difficulty achieving an accurate aim. The P-61 was powered by two Pratt & Whitney R2800 double wasp radial engines, each packing 2,000 horsepower. It was capable of a maximum speed of 366 miles per hour, which was relatively fast considering its immense size. The P-61 also had a tricycle landing gear, retractable flaps, and an internal fuel capacity of 646 gallons. Its estimated fighting weight was over 29,000 pounds. Another stealthy innovation was a new glossy black paint in the metal armor, instead of the usual olive green and gray paint. Night flight tests in Florida in October 1943 pitted both schemes against each other. The black color was not detected in 80% of flights through a gauntlet of anti-aircraft searchlights. Starting in February 1944, all Black Widows were painted deep black, allowing the P-61 to truly fit its name. It took Northrop engineers over a year and a half to fix developmental delays and revisions, all while the Army Air Forces were desperate to start training night pilots. They had no problem getting the crews of volunteers to the training. Redesigns during the pre-production phase cost Northrop 2 critical wartime years. Although its late rollout and obsolescence would ultimately be its demise, Black Widow's delays turned it into a platform for innovation.
470 pounds of fuel left. I think we'll have enough. Kinda getting worried though.
The P-61's official public debut was quite dramatic. In January 1944, the P-61 performed a nighttime flyover of the Los Angeles Coliseum, filled with 75,000 attendees as part of an Army-Navy show. According to some accounts, the crowd couldn't see the plane and could only hear its engines passing over. The first squadron to fly the Black Widow in Europe was the 422nd Night Fighter Squadron on May 23, 1944.
I don't think I've
Almost a
ever
month
seen
later,
that plane
the
in any
425th
game.
Squadron received their Black Widows. However, both of them received the aircraft too late to participate in the D-Day invasion on June 6th. Black Widow's first real mission was targeting the feared German V-1 buzz bomb. In the Mediterranean, the 414th Squadron received its P-61 in December. They worked together with the 422nd Squadron in the Battle of the Bulge, the last major offensive campaign against Allies on the Western Front during World War II. During this battle, the P-61's obsolescence became apparent. Lieutenant Van Nieswinder was piloting his Daisy May Black Widow when an encounter with a twin-engined Messerschmitt 410 led to a pursuit across the top of the woods. Van Nieswinder attempted to attack and follow its enemy by chasing it at full throttle, but by the time the Black Widow caught up, the Me-410 pulled away at 400 miles per hour, making the P-61 seem painfully slow in comparison. The 422nd and 425th Squadrons also found themselves critically short of spare parts by the end of 1944. Being a smaller company, Northrop couldn't keep up with the demand, and the supply issue was never corrected. The squadrons had made do with whatever equipment they had on hand. Most operational P-61s ended up being sent to the Pacific. After Guadalcanal was secured in late 1942, the American stronghold urgently needed nighttime protection from Japanese nighttime raids launched out of bases in the surrounding areas. The Black Widows weren't ready yet, so the Americans temporarily adapted B-25s, P-40s, P-38s, and P-70s as night fighters. Finally, in May 1944, the Black Widows were ready to fly in the Pacific. The first to receive a P-61 was the 6th Night Fighter Squadron. They were the only night fighting squadron, until the 418th and 419th Squadrons also began working with Black Widows. On July 1st, 1944, the 421st Squadron was also activated, and operated from bases at Nadzab, New Guinea, and Wake Island. Actual fighting by the P-61 was sparse. In one of their first missions after the 421st received the Black Widow, Flight Lieutenant Owen Wolfe and Radio Officer Lieutenant Byron Allain were at Owie Island when they received an order to intercept an approaching enemy bomber. Bad weather hampered their radar, but Lieutenant Wolfe still managed to reach the unsuspecting bomber, a Japanese twin-engine. The Black Widow fired both of its nose machine guns and cannons. the enemy bomber burst into a ball of flames and went down into the ocean. The 418th Squadron, based on the island of Moritai, in the Halmaheras in the Dutch East Indies, operated the top-scoring Black Widow. Highlighting the P-61's light action and combat, the 418th conducted a mere 18 successful attacks. Its most triumphant mission came when 3 Kawasaki Ki-61s were destroyed in a single night. Despite its innovative design, the P-61 was only able to play a minor role during the last 6 months of World War II. The Axis powers were already too weak to put up much of a fight on the ground, let alone in the air. The Lady in the Dark P-61, piloted by Captain Lee Kendall, is perhaps the best-known Black Widow in the world. The fighter was photographed hundreds of times in the Pacific Theater. It was also the aircraft that presumably scored the final 2 aerial kills of World War II. The first kill happened on the last night of the war, and the second one almost an entire day after all battles had officially ended. Captain Kendall took down 2 Japanese Imperial Army aircraft on kamikaze missions by aggressively pursuing them and causing them to crash on their own. It's perhaps fitting that the P-61, late to the party, wouldn't even score a hit on 2 of its most notable missions.
Edmonton Center, Gearhead Gaming 421, 15,000 feet.
Simply put, the P-61 arrived too late to World War II. Although it was useful in battles against the Japanese Air Force, it was already obsolete in Europe by the time it got there. Northrop engineers tried to fix as many issues faced by the P-61 as possible. They redesigned the airborne intercept radar and improved the remote-controlled turret. Turbochargers were also added to the aircraft, but it still lagged in speed. Twin-engine British Mosquito Mk-17 ultimately proved a more suitable option for European battles. It slowly relegated the Black Widow into the reserves, where it only worked as a training aircraft. Despite its late arrival, Black Widow still saw combat in every theater of World War II. The fighter destroyed a total of 127 enemy aircraft and 18 German V-1 buzz bombs. After the war, Black Widow was used in a joint study led by 4 U.S. government agencies: the Army Air Force, the Navy, the Weather Bureau, and the National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics, which later became NASA. One project, Operation Thunderstorm, focused on the exploration and study of thunderstorms and how to prevent military and civilian aircraft during them. Many of the theories and discoveries that stemmed from the project became the cornerstone of today's understanding of thunderstorms and related weather phenomena. The project and other utility roles briefly extended the Black Widow's lifespan, but it was officially retired in 1954. In the afternoons of May 2nd and 4th of 1972, trisonic booms rang out over Hoa Lo, also known as the Hanoi Hilton, the largest Vietnamese prison camp of the Vietnam War. 2 SR-71 Blackbirds had broken the sound barrier, carefully allowing 15 seconds to pass between each boom in order to send a secret message to the waiting prisoners of war. The sound was to serve as a signal and promise of freedom, and were the result of a daring and courageous communications network established within the prison. A Navy SEAL rescue mission was on the way. However, descent in the prison would greatly complicate the operation, codenamed Thunderhead. Speaking in code. Hoa Lo, the largest prison in central Hanoi, was used throughout the Vietnam War to hold a large number of American prisoners. The complex was nicknamed Hanoi Hilton by imprisoned Lieutenant Commander Robert Shoemaker in 1966 when he found a Hilton-branded bucket in his shower. It had been built by France during its colonial rule. After his Skyhawk aircraft was taken down during a mission, Commander James B. Stockdale was imprisoned at Walla in September of 1965. He was the senior-most naval officer kept as a prisoner of war throughout the remainder of the conflict. Commander Stockdale soon learned the tap code that the other prisoners had developed while they were under capture. Additionally, the prisoners would leave written notes to each other on single pieces of toilet paper in spots that, hopefully, their captors wouldn't look in. Another crucial prisoner to the communications network established by the captives was Commander Jerry Denton, who was shot down from an A-6A intruder on July 18th of the same year. He was placed in harsh solitary confinement for 10 months and then forced to appear in a propagandist broadcast. During the televised broadcast, he faked being blinded by the spotlights so he could blink out T-O-R-T-U-R-E in Morse code. He faced harsh consequences for his brave act of rebellion. Furthermore, back at Walla, he created a secret code to communicate with other prisoners through the rhythm of his broom movements when he was forced to sweep the courtyard. Commander Stockdale became the leader of the Prisoner Escape Committee in Walla, as the U.S. Code of Conduct for Prisoners of War lays out in its chain of command. The letters. Throughout the Vietnam War, 771 U.S. military members were captured. Out of those, only 658 eventually found their way back to American soil. While a few were kept in Cambodia, Laos, or South Vietnam, the majority were kept in one of 15 camps around North Vietnam. Walla held many of them. 3 months after he was captured, Stockdale was permitted to send his wife a letter in December of 1965. He was able to write her once more 2 months later, and both letters arrived in Sybil Stockdale's hands in April of 1966. Reviewing the letters, Sybil Stockdale immediately noticed that there were confusing comments and references to people or things that did not quite fit in context. She contacted intelligence officials from the Navy in San Diego, who surmised that he was sending coded messages, and connected her with Commander Robert Burroughs in Washington, D.C., with whom she met in May and July. During the second meeting, they decided to coordinate efforts to communicate with her husband. She sent him a coded message for the first time in October of 1966, which contained an invisible ink message hidden in between the layers of a Polaroid. It arrived on Christmas Eve, and he soaked the photo by accident, which revealed the message. He wrote back using the invisible carbon paper and dating it January 2nd, 1976, with a list of 40 names of Americans being held captive. The secret letter was followed by another updating it and stressing that any rescue effort would need to target the North-South Railways by airstrike, the Hanoi radio station for propaganda, and included details about the interrogations being conducted by the Vietnamese. Outside of the communications network, global politics and actions on the U.S. government's part also played a role in the situation faced by the prisoners of war. In 1969, the Nixon administration revealed some of the abuses by the North Vietnamese on their American prisoners. This, combined with the passing of Ho Chi Minh, the head of the Workers' Party of Vietnam that same year, pressured the Politburo into passing a resolution calling for improved treatment of their captives. Before that, only 100 families had been able to communicate through 600 letters between the start of the war and 1969. The passing of the resolution made it possible for U.S. intelligence to double down on the secret messages through the increased flow of letters. By the first months of 1970, 100 families had been able to make contact with their loved ones through 600 letters. The Blackbirds. The SR-71 Blackbird plane was used by the U.S. Air Force between 1964 and 1998. A total of 32 planes were built, with 12 lost to accidents, and not a single one falling to enemy fire. The plane was designed with minimal radar cross-section, as an early stealth plane. The plane was further camouflaged by its dark paint, which was meant to match the sky at night. The SR-71 was ideal for reconnaissance during the Vietnam War, as it was the world's fastest and highest-flying manned aircraft during its run, meaning it could quickly and covertly capture images using panoramic cameras from a high altitude. These missions were codenamed Giant Scale, and would happen first once per week, since mission recovery could take up to a month. This was the result of the Blackbirds often returning with missing parts, delaminated panels, or damaged components. Starting in 1968, the weekly flights lasted 2 years. Once 1970 began, the reconnaissance flights were bumped up to twice per week. During the bi-weekly period, 2 planes were lost to mechanical problems. Although stealthy, the Blackbirds did not go completely undetected. The North Vietnamese shot 800 surface-to-air missiles at these planes during the length of Giant Scale. None of their shots met the targets. Operation Thunderhead. The Department of Defense came up with a plan to rescue its prisoners of war after the failed escape of 2 Americans. Captains John Dramese and Edwin Atterbury managed to sneak out of a Couleau camp on May 10th of 1969, only to be recaptured 3 miles away the following day. Their actions were followed by angry retribution imparted on all prisoners to discourage escapes. The captured senior officers chose to adapt and revised adherence to the Prisoner of War Code of Conduct to stipulate that rather than taking every chance to escape, Americans should only attempt such a move if there was outside assistance and a high chance of success. Despite the promise of treating captive Americans better, the harshness of the captors prompted the Joint Chiefs of Staff Chairman Thomas Moorer to sign a memorandum directed at U.S. Pacific Command authorizing the rescue operation, codenamed Operation Thunderhead. The first order of business was securing a small island on the Red River to use as an observation post and meeting point for any rescued Americans. The USS Grayback submarine and HH-3A helicopters were sent to Vietnam. Initially, they hoped to find escapees along the Vietnamese coast that could be sent to the island, but they failed to locate any. And in April, the USS Grayback sank after slipping its moorings. In June of 1972, Navy SEAL Team 1 and Underwater Demolition Team 11 were sent to North Vietnam for the next part of Operation Thunderhead. By the beginning of 1972, the CIA believed that rescuing those at Wallow was possible thanks to covert communication into the prison through radio. The operation, masterminded by Lieutenant Commander Edwin Towers, called for sending the SEAL team to use swimmer delivery vehicles to spy on the area, with support of 4 daily HH-3A flights doing wider reconnaissance before conducting the rescue. The sonic booms. Captain John Dramese planned on escaping with a fellow prisoner of war to steal a boat and get to the Red River, where he would be rescued by Special Forces, a plan which President Nixon reportedly approved. Other prisoners would reportedly also seek to leave the Wallow prison either at the same time or soon after. The plan was in motion, but a week before the intended rescue mission, all reconnaissance efforts were ruined by the weather. Captain Dramese began to fear the consequences for all prisoners should the effort fail, reminded by his previous experience attempting to escape. To make sure that the involved prisoners knew that the rescue effort was forthcoming, a new signal was devised. May 2nd and 4th of 1972 saw the 2 SR-71 Blackbirds fly over Hanoi. A third aircraft was placed on standby in case one of the other 2 failed. Each of the 2 days in the afternoon, one of the planes flew at supersonic speed, setting off a sonic boom. The other would do the same 15 seconds later, letting the prisoners of war held at Wallow know that their escape and rescue plan could be carried out. Both sonic boom days went according to plan. The interrupted reconnaissance in the area was of lesser importance, since the previous months had given the intelligence community what they thought was sufficient information. It was believed that the mission had a 90% chance of success, so little could get in the way. However, many prisoners viewed the plans differently. On hold. Captain Dramese couldn't live with the possibility of things going wrong, so he went to the prison's senior ranking officer to remind him of the consequences that originated from his and Atterbury's escape attempt in 1969. Particularly, he brought up Article 4 of the Prisoner of War Code of Conduct, which states in part that, quote, "If I become a prisoner of war, I will keep faith with my fellow prisoners. I will give no information or take part in any action which might be harmful to my comrades." He believed that ensuring the safety of all prisoners came before possibly releasing some of them, including himself. Dramese's appeal was enough to move the senior ranking officer, who immediately asked the escape committee to stand down and withdrew his permission for escape attempts. The slow communication network meant that the signal was given, even though the effort had been cancelled by the prisoners. Thunderhead was terminated, and the mission was called off, following a series of mishaps to which Navy SEAL Lieutenant Melvin Dry was lost. The majority of the prisoners of war kept by Vietnam would not be repatriated until January of 1973, and 691 of them were sent back to the United States. Commander Stockdale was among them, and received the Medal of Honor from President Ford for his work organizing and leading the prisoners. Dark Docs is excited to announce a new channel, Dark Skies. Click the new logo on screen or the link in the description below to subscribe now. Join us as we bring the world of aviation out of the dark. New videos exploring the biggest and fastest airplanes ever built, top secret military projects, and classified missions with hidden, untold, true stories. It's been an incredible journey with you from our first channel, Dark 5, to where we are today. Thank you for your support, and please click to join us on our next adventure, Dark Skies.
Hello everybody, welcome back to a brand new episode of Mega Projects. In this one, the craft that you've probably heard of because of Elon Musk and also because of the SR-71, but it was all kind of secret. It's the A-12. We're diving into it today and let's get into it. If, like the rest of the world, you're wondering why Elon Musk, there we go, and his girlfriend Grimes, one-word person apparently, names their newborn son the frankly bizarre name of X-A12, and I only know how to pronounce that A-E thing, Ash, because I saw Elon Musk interviewed on Joe Rogan's podcast, and he says it there, then you've come to the right place. And yes, it does tie in with our Mega Projects video today. The X stands for the unknown variable, which is so cringe already. AE is the elven spelling for AI, or Ash, as I said before, but it is the A12 that is of particular interest to us. Some might suggest that it's a little strange to name a child after a high-altitude reconnaissance aircraft. Yeah, I mean, Elon Musk is a bit of a strange man though, isn't he? But hey, I think it's fair to say that Elon Musk has been consistently thinking outside of the box for a while now, and being weird. Okay, but enough with the baby names, let's get down to business. The Lockheed A-12 came with the exalted nickname Archangel. For those of you who are a little biblically rusty, myself included, an Archangel is an angel of high rank, a top dog if you will, and the Lockheed A-12 was exactly that, a thunderous Mach 3 plus reconnaissance aircraft which only served the CIA for 5 years from 1963 to 1968 and was only officially declassified in the 1990s. It was a phantom during its time in the skies, and because of its more famous younger sibling, the SR-71 Blackbird, it is an aircraft that has sadly slipped out of the limelight, until today that is. You may have seen a Mega Projects we did about the U-2 aircraft, the American spy plane that was famously shot down over the Soviet Union in 1960. The U-2 had proven itself more than capable, but also much more trackable by radar than the Americans had initially thought. In that previous video, there was the example of like it being really high up. The Americans thought the Soviets couldn't see it, but there were MiG scrambles, but they just couldn't get up there to find it. It was just too high. Despite much tinkering, known as Project Rainbow, the United States was not able to find a way to reduce the radar cross-section of the U-2, which would have made it harder to track. So, if you can't improve the old aircraft, well, what are you to do? Well, you build a brand new one, of course. You're the American military. You've basically got an unlimited budget. The American military often reaps the benefit of good old-fashioned competition, and it was through one such battle of aviation minds that the A-12 emerged. Convair and Lockheed were both given the task of developing plans for a new high-altitude reconnaissance aircraft that would be able to supersede the U-2. The Convair model was known as Kingfish, while the Lockheed plan was known as Archangel 1, or A-1 for short. If we fast forward slightly through the developments, the crunch moment came as Kingfish faced off against the Lockheed model, now known as Archangel 11. And I mean, Kingfish is a cool name, but Archangel 11? Slightly cooler. It seemed as if Convair were about to pinch a lucrative contract, but in the final stages, a few tweaks to the A-11 meant that it moved ahead of the Kingfish, and on the 26th of January 1960, the CIA placed an order for 12 aircraft, now with the final name A-12. The production project took the name Oxcart, which, when you consider the A-12's blistering speed, is just a little bit ironic. The construction of this aircraft, well ahead of its time, begins with a wonderful tale of Cold War business espionage. Today, titanium is widely used around the world in just a variety of products, from space shuttles to tennis rackets, but its use in the late 1950s was still in its relative infancy. The US government typically received the titanium it needed from Titanium Metals Corporation, a US-based company. However, its stockpile of this chemical element was severely limited and was completely insufficient for the A-12's design requirements. There was, however, one country with plenty of titanium in reserve, and indeed one that pioneered its use in military hardware, and I'm gonna give you just one guess, because yes, of course, it is the Soviet Union. Of all the countries the US needed to try and procure this precious metal alloy from, well, it was its most fearsome enemy. As you can imagine, it was completely out of the question for the director of the CIA to pick up the phone and be like, "Hey, Soviet Union, I need some titanium." So instead, what they did was set up an elaborate scheme to purchase titanium from the Soviets using various back alley sources, third parties, and dummy corporations. This resulted in perhaps one of the most ironic ventures of the entire Cold War, that a plane was being built to spy on the Soviet Union, which had partly come from the Soviet Union. There's just something very Manchurian candidate about all of this. But just one more point about the titanium. At this time, it was mainly used for small parts, but the design of the A-12 called for most of it to be constructed from the rigid and difficult to machine alloy. The aircraft's curved layout, therefore, proved to be a dilemma to its designer and builders. A solution was found to cut small fillets of the material and then glue them to the underlying framework, rather than attempt to cut large-scale pieces of titanium. As the design progressed further, these fillets were eventually replaced with strips of iron ferrite and silicon laminate, which proved to be pretty excellent at reflecting radar. As you might expect from such a forward-thinking aircraft, testing was a little bit rocky. The A-12 took to the skies for its first test flight on the 26th of April 1962 with test pilot Louis Schalk at the controls. The site chosen was Groom Lake, a salt flat located in the north of Area 51, and it was from this secretive location that the A-12 tests were carried out. Its maiden voyage was an almighty 3 kilometers at an altitude of just 6 meters over the salt below. Despite some serious wobbling caused by the improper hookup of some navigational cords, the flight was considered a success.
Coffee.
The following day, the A-12 left the salt flats once again, this time clocking up a total of 40
Hey, it's
minutes in
Vsauce.
the air. Again, this was considered a
Is
successful
that Michael?
flight,
That
but
is
it did
Michael,
begin
isn't
to
it?
shed its titanium
Oh.
fillets as it climbed above 90 meters. Thus, the term success is a fairly loose concept here. Engineers spent 4 days searching the area for the missing fillets, and you know, we can see why,
Simon?
because of the hassle that it took to get the stuff.
Not
In
my fault.
1963, the program lost their first A-12. The aircraft with the distinction Article 123 crashed near Wendover in Utah. Though the pilot successfully ejected, this did pose a problem of what exactly do you say when a secret spy plane crashes on American soil. Kenneth S. Collins, the pilot of the plane that had gone down, was dressed in a standard flight suit, which probably helped with the story that a Republic F-105 Thunder Chief, a fighter bomber that had been operating for the past 5 years, had crashed nearby. I suppose it would have been a lot worse if he had CIA secret project dude, or just CIA emblazoned on his flight suit. 2 farmers nearby were dissuaded from approaching the crash site with the terrifying news that the plane had crashed while carrying nuclear weapons. Now, obviously, this was a lie, but it's certainly a surefire way to keep people away from the crash site. Nobody likes getting irradiated. Another way was through cash payments in exchange for silence. Apparently, $25,000, which is about $209,000 today, was paid to each member of the law enforcement team in the area, and it didn't stop there. There were multiple stories of shady payments made in the coming years as the CIA attempted to keep the existence of the A-12 secret. And apparently, if you want to make a bit of extra money on the side, move to somewhere near Area 51 and wait for things to fall out of the sky. Don't do that, it's not advice. 3 more A-12s crashed during testing. On the 9th of July 1964, Article 133 ran into problems when a pitch control servo mechanism froze at an altitude of 150 meters. This resulted in the plane rolling to the left, exactly what you don't want to do when you're about to land. Pilot ejected, but because of the trajectory of the aircraft, he was blown sideways. Somewhat miraculously, considering the altitude and the direction, his parachute opened and he managed to land safely. On the 28th of December 1965, Article 126 crashed just 30 seconds after takeoff due to a maintenance error, but again, the pilot was able to eject to safety. Things were not quite as lucky on January the 5th, 1967, as Operation Oxcart experienced its first fatality. No definite reason for the crash of Article 125 was ever given, but most likely a fuel gauge error meant that the aircraft ran out of fuel still 108 kilometers from its base. CIA pilot Walter Ray did manage to eject successfully, but could not detach from his seat, and unfortunately died on impact. Despite the numerous incidents, this was actually considered quite normal for an experimental aircraft like the A-12. It was quite simply operating at a different level than anything that had come before it, and occurrences like these were considered part and parcel of development. I mean, it's called testing for a reason. Things are going to go wrong as you find out the way to go right. But by the early months of 1967, the US government believed that the aircraft was ready and it was time for it to ship out. But before we go into the real world missions that this plane flew, let's take a closer look at the aircraft itself.
IFR to Charlie Yankee X-Ray Juliet, ready to copy.
The A-12 is often compared to its successor, the SL-71, and looking at both from a distance, they are almost indistinguishable. The A-12's wingspan of 17 meters is exactly the same as the SL-71, while its length of 31 meters is marginally shorter than its younger brother. And I've actually been to see an SL-71 in a museum, and it was way bigger than I expected. As I mentioned earlier, the A-12 is considered a Mach 3 plus aircraft with a top speed of around 4,103 kilometers per hour, which remains pretty extraordinary even to this day. Concorde, which we always associate with record-breaking speed, had a top speed of 1,924 kilometers slower than the A-12. Although, to be fair, Concorde is a commercial aircraft and, you know, we don't have any expectations that it's going to go faster than a jet, like a fighter jet. Now, it must be said that much of the information around the A-12 is still classified. We have no way of knowing how often or if ever the A-12s needed to travel at this speed. Just to add to the confusion, the SL-71 has a slightly slower top speed but still manages to beat the A-12 in some fastest planes in the world list. This is probably because they only cover official flights, and as we're going to go into shortly, the A-12 was a most unofficial aircraft. The A-12 also had a higher service ceiling with a monstrous reported altitude of 29,000 meters, that's 95,000 feet. That's not far off 3 times the cruising altitude of a passenger airliner today. Just to be really clear, that is 29 kilometers straight up into the sky. We would need 35 Burj Khalifas, the tallest building in the world, stacked on top of each other to get to that height. And just before we continue, the Burj Khalifa, I'm not sure whether to do a mega project about that because there are so many videos already out there about the Burj Khalifa that I'm not even sure whether it's worth covering, but if you want it, let me know in the comments below, and I shall oblige because I find it pretty interesting. I find skyscrapers pretty... I started a channel about mega projects. You are not surprised by this. The SL-71 has a service ceiling of 3,048 meters, less than the A-12, which still makes it easily the second highest altitude plane in aviation history. The A-12 was powered by 2 Pratt & Whitney JT11D20B afterburning turbo.
Observables became the mantra of the force multiplier technique. The B-2 is going to go and attack bridges and other transportation nodes to prevent the tanks from moving forward into Western Germany. The advanced tactical fighter was to take out their interceptors who could attack.
The Pentagon's plan was in place, and the race for air superiority shifted into top gear. In the early 1980s, the Air Force began a concept development investigation, requesting proposals from the leading airframe companies for design concepts for an advanced tactical fighter, or ATF. In 1983, 7 companies responded, but only 2 proposals were chosen by the Pentagon. In 1986, the winners, Northrop and Lockheed, were contracted to develop 2 prototype aircraft which would compete in a fly-off for a multi-billion-dollar government contract. The Pentagon also encouraged the other bidders to team up with Northrop or Lockheed. For 50 years, Hawthorne, California-based Northrop had been a bold developer, designer, and supplier of high-performance aircraft, such as the F-5 and its legendary V-2 stealth bomber. Northrop teamed up with McDonnell Douglas, their longtime partner on the F-18 program, and a dominant fighter manufacturer.
Back into the clouds we go.
And the F-15 Eagle. Always an innovative company, Burbank, California-based Lockheed had been responsible for some of the most brilliant designs in the industry, including the first jet fighter, the P-80, the U-2 spy plane, the SR-71, and the F-117 stealth fighter. Lockheed now teamed up with 2...
All right. far out are we here? 26 minutes. We're coming in here, runway 3. Oh no, to circle around and hit 3. Excuse me.
Edmonton Center, Gearhead Gaming 421 requesting vector to next waypoint.
Gearhead Gaming 421, turn left, heading 170, resume on navigation.
Turn left, heading 170, proceed on course Gearhead Gaming 421.
Oh, the wait is real. I'm getting tired now. It's almost 2 in the morning. It is 2 in the morning. 1:57 a.m.
Edmonton Center, Gearhead Gaming 421. Request 5,000 feet.
Gearhead Gaming 421, descend and maintain 5,000 feet.
Descend and maintain 5,000 feet, Gearhead Gaming 421. wind and maintain 4,200 feet. Gearhead Gaming 421, please acknowledge. Gearhead Gaming 421, please acknowledge. Gearhead Gaming 421, please acknowledge. Gearhead Gaming 421, IFR flight plan is canceled. Radar service terminated. Squawk 1200. Maintain VFR. Frequency change approved.
All right. Alright, let's get this thing on the ground. So we'll go for runway 3.
Yankee X-Ray Juliet traffic Gearhead Gaming 421 tree 8 miles northeast, 12,700 feet inbound to land runway tree.
Slowly dropping. Windshield's icing up nicely. Lights are all on. We're on the cabin lights. Just in case we crash, they're gonna need the light to get off. I think we'll be alright though. Hopefully. There's us.
Charlie Yankee X-Ray Juliet traffic Gearhead Gaming 421 is on downwind runway tree.
Finally. It's pretty damn windy outside, so I'm gonna slow it down a bit. Prop, everything is 100. Yeah, that's way worse.
Charlie Yankee X-Ray Juliet traffic Gearhead Gaming 421 6 miles northeast 7,300 feet inbound to land runway tree. Alright, get on the base here and huzzah. Seems we're actually gonna keep it going down to about 35. Works.
Train's definitely sticking a little bit quick here. There's 3,500. Lights are all on, yes. Oh, I can't wait to land this so I can go to bed. Oh, getting tired. 2:20 in the morning. Did not expect this.